This structure of an essay video will show you how to properly write a hook and a thesis, which goes into your introduction, body paragraphs, and a conclusion paragraph. Generally speaking, you're going to have at least 5 paragraphs. However, you might have more, depending on the length of the essay. For your first essay, 5 paragraphs should be sufficient. You will always start with an introduction, which will be your first paragraph. The majority of the paragraphs will be body paragraphs, so at least 3 here. But again, you can have more. And then the last paragraph will always be your conclusion. You will start with the introductory paragraph. The introduction has 3 parts. You must have all of them in this particular order. You will start with a hook. The hook draws the reader's attention in, and it's about 3 to 4 sentences for the first essay. As the essay length gets longer, the hook may get longer. Then you'll have a transition. It's usually about 1 sentence, so a transitional sentence. The purpose of the transition is to link or connect the hook to the thesis statement. Then you end with the thesis statement, which is very important. The thesis statement should be 1 sentence and the last sentence of the introduction. Remember, do not ever announce or discuss your paper by saying something like, "This paper will discuss," or "I am about to tell you this." It's better for you just to say it than to say you're going to say it. Okay, more on a hook. So again, the hook catches the reader's attention. So what kind of things can you do in your hook? Well, the anecdote is the best way to do it for the first paper. Basically, you're telling a brief story, history, or background that illustrates a point. So you can say, on September 11, 2001, America experienced a devastating attack on its freedom. And then you will elaborate, because remember, a hook is around 3-4 sentences. You can also correct a misunderstanding or an assumption, like the example, although Iceland sounds like a frightfully cold country, Iceland's weather is actually warmer than its name suggests, and then you will go on. Basically, what you want to do is you want to draw the reader in. You want to make the reader want to continue to read your paper. This is just a note for future papers, not the first paper. You may have quotations and then elaborate on why that quote is relevant for the paper. Of course, in your first paper, we're not having any outside quotations, so therefore you wouldn't be able to do this in your first paper. So let's try it. If our thesis statement is, "Although I love to swim competitively, I hate swimming in the ocean because of the rip currents, the crowds, and the sea life." What could be some possible hooks? Well, you could discuss the movie Jaws and how it has struck fear in a lot of swimmers in the ocean. You can talk about a personal example of your own maybe ocean or pool experience. Maybe you nearly drowned one time. Maybe you were stung by a jellyfish. Maybe you had to be saved by a lifeguard. You can talk about the Michael Phelps, who is probably the best known competitive swimmer in U.S. history. There's a lot of different approaches you can take. So now we'll discuss the thesis statement. So you'll have your hook, you'll transition into the thesis statement, and then the thesis statement should be a very strong, thought out sentence that ends the introduction. There are certain things that the thesis statement must have. Of course, it must have your topic narrowed down. So in the first essay, you will have your narrowed down definitions, such as first love. Then you'll have your points. So here you'll have at least 3 points. You may have more. The points in your first paper are going to be the definitions of your topic. So, in this, the thesis, what claim you're making, in this particular example is pizza is the best breakfast food in the world. But then you also want to give a plan of development. Why do you think it's the best breakfast food? Well, it's nutritionally balanced, filling, and tastes great when someone is especially tired. Then you kind of reword it and make it one sentence, and then you'll have a complete thesis statement. Pizza is the best breakfast food in the world because it is nutritionally balanced, filling, and tastes great. Here's an example of an introduction, although yours will be much longer. This is just an example about the Marine Corps. So the red part is a hook. Again, yours will be at least 3 to 4 sentences. This is just to show you an example. Then you'll see how it transitions into the thesis statement, which is the purplish gray. So then you'll move on to body paragraphs, which we will discuss further in a week or so with the meal format. And if you probably don't know what that is yet, and that's okay. But just generally speaking, though, you need to follow your thesis for the order of your body paragraphs. For example, here we had toughest training was listed first in our plan of development. Therefore, it will be the first body paragraph, followed by terrifying drill instructors, and then the loss of freedom. Again, you may have more body paragraphs than 3, but that's just general. We will discuss body paragraphs a lot more in detail, but for right now, you need to know that you always start a body paragraph with a topic sentence that introduces the point and a transition. So the first point should always be in that first sentence. Then you will follow through with examples and details, and then you'll end with a summary sentence. Again, we will use the meal format in this class, which I have not discussed with you yet. Here is an example of a body paragraph using the Marine Corps example. Notice that the red font is indicating a topic sentence which discusses toughest training. They just use different words, difficult basic training. And then the following gives examples and details, and it ends with a link. Then, after you do all your body paragraphs, you will have a conclusion. The conclusion wraps up the essay. Now, with that being said, it should not just repeat everything you just told me in your body paragraphs and your intro. There should be something new here, but it should be relevant. So there are 3 parts to the conclusion, so you should restate the thesis and return to your hook. Now, I said restate, not repeat. So although the thesis statement order of the plan of development should stay the same, you couldn't use different words or structure that sentence differently. Again, restate, don't repeat. You should also return to your hooks idea. So if you discuss the movie Jaws, go back to that. Will people continue to be scared of sharks? Will Jaws and the legacy live on? Have people kind of moved away from being scared of sharks? Things like that. Again, make sure it's relevant to your point of your whole essay, though. So you will summarize main points and your supporting thesis, and then this is where you add something new with a closing statement. You can predict the future or recommend a solution, but give me something more to work with. Kind of think that you are going to set your essay up for a sequel, even though you're not, but set it up for a sequel. Again, remember you have to restate the thesis, which should still include the topic and the plan development in the same order, just use different words. Don't repeat. And with the closing statement, you can wrap it up, you can push forward, but don't use words or phrases like in conclusion, or refer to your essay directly as stated before. Remember, do not speak to the reader. And here is an example of a conclusion. Remember, in this first essay, you will not have a quotation like this has. However, this is just something that you can model after. And basically, this is just a rundown of how to set up an intro, body paragraphs, and a conclusion.